Criminal Justice Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Byrne?
Present.
Mr. Hess? Mr. Washington? Mr. Legess? Mr. Stauffenberg? Mr. Vickery? Mr. Tholen? Mr. McConnell? Mr. Scott? Mr. Snipes? Mr. Seroy? Mr. Einfeld? Ms. Evans? Mr. Payton? Ms. Dunbar? Ms. Parker? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Wheeler? Mr. Lear? We have a quorum.
Sounds good. I have no public commentary. Need to approve the minutes of June 13th, 2018. Need a motion? Mr. Legess, second by Mr. McConnell. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. No judge this morning. No Sandy. We'll put. Okay, we'll make a motion to. Okay, to what? Okay. We'll go down the list here. Well, let's make a motion to approve the circuit clerk's monthly report. Need a motion? Ms. Parker, seconded by Mr. Stauffenberg. All in favor? Opposed? State's Attorney Joe Cosman, come on down. You're today's winner. Yes. We have the grand jury report in the packet. Need a motion to approve. Mr. Legess and Mr. Seroy, all in favor? Opposed? How you doing, sir?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Cosman. I'm the first assistant stepping in for Jim during this time. July 5th, we had a grand jury. During that grand jury, there were 18 true bills. That means 18 indictments were handed down by the grand jury. There were 2 no bills. That means that the grand jury, after hearing the evidence, did not decide there was enough for probable cause. As the report states, 3 of them were offenses against persons, 7 offenses against property, 1 offense against public health, 4 offenses against the Cannabis Control Act, and 3 offenses against the Illinois Vehicle Code. To date, we have charged, the grand jury has charged or indicted 382 individuals with felony crimes. Any questions?
Any questions for Joe? Left them speechless. Good
Nice
to see you,
quick.
Joe. Oh. Yeah. 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 You're approved. Happy belated birthday, by the way.
Good morning. Thank you. It sure is low. They were all over for some reason.
The Willy Wonka convention was here.
The what?
The Willy Wonka convention.
Oh. Good morning. Sorry I'm late. I just got to the bridge and then they put the red light on and I had to wait a couple more seconds. So, you approved my report?
Yes.
Okay. The state's attorney court call report, we brought in $13,718.72, so that was an increase over, that's pretty much the biggest collection month that they've done so far. So that was good. Harris & Harris, we've increased that by $100,000 compared to last year, so that was really awesome for this time of year last year.
Is there a reason for that?
I don't really know what the uptick is. People are just paying, you know. We've been really busy, I know. We've logged in around 300 hours of comp time or overtime or whatever. We've been working a lot of Saturdays and trying to catch up, because if you're at the counter collecting money, you can't do the rest of the work. You know, it's been nuts. And so we've consistently had between, I don't know, 10 and 14 people that come in on a Saturday, so that's good. But that's all I've got for now.
Any questions, Mr. McConnell?
with all this overtime and everything, is it beneficial or look at hiring other people?
Well, that's why I'm gauging it now, because I've asked to hire other people and I've not been given that opportunity. So we have to. I mean, we're doing this overtime. We just have to. And so I will keep everybody apprised as we go along so that we can find out if it
Makes
really
sense,
would
yeah.
justify, because with all of the, the activity that we've got, it's we've been at a lull for so long and now things are picking up and we can't keep up.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Gus isn't here. Need to make a motion to approve Public Defender's monthly report. Motion to Washington, second by Mr. Payton. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Sheriff. We have the Sheriff's monthly report. Need a motion to approve. Mr. Snipes, seconded by anyone? Mr. Stauffenberg. All in favor? Opposed?
Morning. Morning. You have the monthly report, or you should have. There was a little bit of a mix-up in what got sent out, but that's okay. The right one did end up getting sent out. As you can see, our numbers are staying fairly high, so high that we are at the point now where we are turning away people. I know that's difficult to do, but we are only turning them away if it is a safety security issue. We're not going to put our guys in a situation where, for $80 a day, that puts our people in a situation that we don't want, the county doesn't want. So they do a really good job of working that out. Our relationship with ICE and the marshals is going really well. I don't foresee that changing at all. A couple things of concern that you should be aware of. If you look under section B under transports, if you look to the far right and you see that last year in fiscal year 17 we had 391 transports involving ICE. Now, the good news for that is that we get reimbursed and we get mileage. The problem is it's the wear and tear on our vehicles, and I'm not gonna sit up here and ask for vehicles. We've been there, done that. However, I think something you should be aware of, through June of this year, we are already 60 transports less than all of last year. So, well, with our numbers so high, and again, that gets back to the whole, it costs some money to operate. And believe me, I don't want to use the term profit. I've never used the term profit, but and we're not selling our soul for the almighty dollar. We are easing the burden of our local taxpayers for our local inmates. So I think it's important that we pass that out there, get that out there, because people think that we're basically selling our soul for the almighty dollar, and that's not the case. ICE and the marshals are going to house these individuals somewhere. Kankakee County might as well be the beneficiary of that. So,
Mr. Seabright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Sheriff, while you're talking about your transports, you've got 313 so far to date.
Right.
That's is that one way, or is that
oh, it's round trip.
round trip?
No, that's
so
round
that's
trip.
2 a day almost.
Yeah, pretty much.
Round trip, 2 a day?
Round trip.
Okay, I was just wondering because that number seems a little high when,
Yes.
when you think about round
Yeah,
trip.
it's
Or
round trip.
I was hoping it was one way, but
No, it's round trip.
round trip.
Mhm.
So are you going to 2 different locations?
We go to court, which is it's on Congress. I can't think of the first 3 numbers. I think it's 111 West
Okay.
Congress, and then we go to Broadview, which is where we may pick up some people. So we've got court going on. They've got people to pick up.
Okay.
So
All right.
And they're in
just-
2 different locations.
I figured it must be 2 different locations because of so many trips, but
Yes.
thank you for clarification.
And we are also, just to add to that, just to add to your question, we are also going to, so if an ICE detainee gets released from prison, so Pontiac, somewhere close, they will call us to go get them. So we go there as well. So sometimes there's 3 or 4 trips in a day. Sometimes there's minimal, but, so we're going a lot of different places.
So I was trying to think, you got 3 buses now? Or
We have 2 buses.
2 buses? That's a lot.
We don't always take the bus. And I mean, our
Some of your transports you can do with a
people
vehicle?
who are in charge of all the transporting do a great job in utilizing those vehicles and making sure our mileages and that they've been maintained and everything else.
You get the same reimbursement for the bus as you do for
Yes.
like a,
Yes.
okay.
If we don't have to take the bus, we won't. I mean, just, yeah, yeah. The second one I'd like you to take a look at under transports is under juveniles, which is 2 to the left of where ICE is. As you can see, last year we transported juveniles mainly to River Valley 300 different times. And now already through June we're at 200. So that's certainly a burden on our transport guys as well. So not only are we transporting ICE, I mean, you look across that whole column or that whole row, and you look at the transports, you know, between medical, going to Chicago for the U.S. Marshals, out of county, courthouse, juveniles, the old jail, and ICE. I mean, that is significant transports that we do daily. They're not quite as bad on the weekends. In fact, they're minimal on the weekends, but Monday through Friday, I mean, we are on the road a lot. Yes. If you go down to item C, the far right, those released from Department of Corrections back into our community. Last year, throughout the entire year, 365 days, there was 555 individuals released from prison back to our community. Already this year through June, we're at 446, so that number obviously will increase. And unfortunately, and there's all kinds of arguments about recidivism and everything else, a lot of these people that are getting out of prison recommit. So, you know, which may be one of the reasons why our local population isn't really going down much. Under the second section, the sworn division, the first column there under accidents, you can see through June our accidents are up by over 50 this year through the same time period last year. However, our citations are up, so our guys are out there trying to control the traffic, but you know, there's just not enough. There's just not enough of our guys out there trying to slow traffic down, so something to keep in mind. Everything else has remained fairly consistent. Our civil process, our paper service is up. So, as I told the finance committee, you know, we are a reactive police department and not a proactive police department. We are out there serving papers, running from call to call. We're not out there preventing anything. We're just responding. So, something else to keep in mind. And if you look at the bottom under revenue. Our revenue numbers are really far above what we ever anticipated. I think it is important, however, that next year when we do our projections for revenue, 2 years ago our projected revenue, we brought in 8.4. This year we projected 8.7, hoping that there would be an increase. I would strongly suggest that next year we don't project much over 9, and if we hit 9, that's a good thing because that's what we anticipated. If we hit 10 again, then we all benefit. The county benefits. So I would just, because we've been down this road before where we were literally projecting numbers that were impossible for the sheriff's office to reach, and then we got criticized for it. So. And believe me, I can take criticism. That's not the issue, but unwarranted criticism is something that I think can be avoidable. So, nope. Question. Microphone.
I just want to go back to, I started the what we call the recidivism rate of individuals coming in and then going back. I do know at one particular time, though it may be defunct and need to be resurrected, there was some type of program that's going to be in place to acclimate them back into society. And I think my greatest concern is if they have been away from society, coming out like serving a 15 to 20 year sentence, the world has kind of changed. The job market and skill level has kind of changed. And so it would be totally unfair. And I've always argued this even when I work with the Department of Corrections, that we're really not the Department of Corrections because we're not correcting anything. They used to have educational programs and things in there, but now when you're bringing them back into society, we almost set them up to go back because, as some may say, I'm not ready for this kind of world, and I'm comfortable with the world that I'm accustomed to. So even though I really it don't make sense for me to go back, but that's the only world I know, so I do something to go back, if that makes sense.
It does, and I can address most of that, Mr. Snipes. Back in late 2006 or 2007, the state of Illinois passed some reentry legislation from people returning from the Department of Corrections. And what that meant was where they would, upon about 6 months prior to their release, they would start that whole process, and they even talked about possibly sending them back to county jails. Well, we couldn't take them, and not many jails have room for people getting out and transitioning back to where they came from. So basically what happened was they passed this legislation, didn't fund any of it, so it's one of our many laws that nobody can do. We are fortunate here. We have our own reentry, if you will, with Jasper Jones and John Redmond, and so they are doing some programs inside here. We still have a number of programs that we're doing inside because back in 2005 when we built this jail, one of the things that we made sure we had were programs to help people get their GED, drug and alcohol counseling. So we do have programs in here that are doing that, but that's on a local level, but it's nothing coming back from the state of Illinois. That's a state of Illinois issue that, likely it'll never get resolved. So, one of the things I think is important to note, and we refer to this out-of-county program, I think, a lot as ICE because it was all new and it's helped us tremendously. But I think you should know that this year alone, from June of 2017, we were averaging 133 U.S. Marshal prisoners out of Chicago. And as of June of this year, we're averaging 161. So that number has increased significantly as well. So it's not really just ICE that's, helping us. It's everything. And we went through a period of about 8 years, and I won't tell you what 8 years that was, but you can probably figure it out, where they didn't arrest anybody. They stopped arresting anybody. They stopped funding, and now they're back to arresting people. And so that's been a big plus for us too. So something you should certainly keep in mind. Questions on any of that report?
I do know that in the I don't want to say the good years, but in the productive years, you will see increased things in revenue. But in the back of my mind, there's a reservoir that says, do I prepare for the lean time? If that is the problem, and is there a balance where I can see that, in production years, get what I got to get and everything else, but also prepare for the lean time, if it was to occur?
Well, I think, is there an answer to that question? Probably not, but I can say that the plan for lean times that has always been there is to cut our staff. I mean, that's the plan for the lean times. Yeah, so
Anything else?
Anything else for the sheriff?
I brought this to finance and they kicked it back here to move it forward. It wasn't on the agenda, but you know, one of the things I think is important to note when we talk about profit and we talk about, or we, let's not talk about profit. We refer to it as profit. It's not profit.
Increased revenue above
So
budget expectations.
it is not profit. So it offsets the cost of our own inmates. As we've talked about, even in the bad years, as Mr. Snipes referred to from his reservoir,
How do you say that in Latin?
even in the bad years, you know, it was shown that this program still saved local taxpayers about $2.5 million. And I think that's something that you as a board should really, you know, hang your hat on. Were it not for this program, you know, we couldn't have come up with that $2.5 million, just like we can't come up with $4.5 million now. So where our numbers are at now, you know, it's saving local taxpayers about $4.5 million a year. We hope that trend continues. Obviously, everybody in our department is working hard so that does continue. With that said, what I would like to do is take some of that money that we're saving taxpayers and apply it to helping our sheriff's department, our patrol division, increase their staff. I really don't think that is something that this board, if your goal and if your priority is public safety, then I think it's time that we put our money where our mouth is, if you will.
I've always said that, you know, we're a nonprofit, you know, as a government agency, and that nonprofits reinvest in their business. And this is a program that I feel strongly about, that we need to take what we can and reinvest it back into the department. I know there's a setup with the general fund. I think it's time we do look at reinvesting in our sheriff's department and adding staff where appropriate and what we need to do. And having been on the road on all three shifts at one time or another, our guys need the help out there. There's serious crime. I mean, our deputies face urban issues, even in the rural parts of the county, that most counties around us don't. And I feel pretty strong about it. Mr. McConnell?
I've advocated this for the last 10 years, that we take a portion of our revenue and put it back in. It's cost of doing business. You have to have X amount of dollars to continue on. And yeah, I realize this goes to general fund. However, you can't continue around here to pay Paul. You just can't do it and sustain what we have. You know, the sheriff's department did an unbelievable job, and yet we keep taking revenue because this over there, this over there. You got to keep a certain thing, and we talked about vehicles. We talked about that way back. We're buying 5 a year. We stopped that.
Yeah, it's not just a public
doesn't make
safety issue for the public, but it's also for our deputies as well.
Yeah, let's talk about the vehicles. You know, we wrecked a couple of them because they weren't taken care of and they were old. So they just need to, and I agree with you 100%.
Mr. Lear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to address my remarks to the members of this committee. I want to first compliment the sheriff both on the administration of his department and the program with the ICE and with the marshals. Obviously, he and his staff have done a fantastic job. But as members of this committee, I'd like to maybe expand our perspective here a little bit with a little bit of an analogy, and I hope I'm not being inappropriate by doing so, but I've been thinking about the requests that I heard the sheriff make, and I got to realizing that as members of the county board, we're in some ways like a sports team that's under a salary cap. We've got a situation where the taxpayers have told us this is how much money you've got, and the sheriff appropriately is, in my mind, almost is acting as an advocate for what I would see if I used a football team, the most important player on the football team, the quarterback. Quarterback gets the attention. The quarterback is the one who is seen by the public as being the most important person on the team. And yet, I guess I've heard a few sports commentators suggest the quarterback can't be successful unless he's got a line, unless he's got some receivers. As members of this committee and as the county board, I think we need to think of county government as a total team. I would suggest that we have to recognize the sheriff and those deputies can't do their job if in fact we can't maintain this facility. For those of you that are not on buildings and grounds, you may not be aware of the fact that really there is one employee that is a major factor in terms of maintaining this, and Wes Andrews and Brian have both suggested that in terms of inadequacies, if that employee decided to leave us, we'd be in huge trouble, because the institutional knowledge he has, nobody else has. The knowledge of the facility he has, nobody else has really. I think it's safe to say that if we're interested in public safety, it's more than just the deputies on the road. It's the successful operation of the court system. And that means that Sandy's people have to be able to do their jobs. So as we make our judgments, we're in a really tough place. Our salary cap means that we're only going to be able to go so far in terms of meeting anyone's request. I'm sure any NFL team would prefer to be always able to have the best quarterback, and I'd love to see us having the best quarterback. At this point, the taxpayers have given us a salary cap, and as we make our decisions, we have to balance the demands of all the departments.
And that's also why we're going to be moving this on to finance. I spoke with Chairman Wheeler, and he is in favor of increasing staffing levels, and he proposed we move this to finance to discuss on more of the financial end of things. But yes, Mr. Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, I'm just looking at your sheet here, and you guys are working a lot harder than you were working last year. You're regular guys. And, you know, I'm going to go back to the transports. How many guys, you got two transports a day. You got one deputy on that transport and a correctional officer, or they're both correctional?
No. Deputies assist when we're short next door.
Okay.
To try to alleviate overtime.
All right. But your civil processes are huge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that falls back on the court systems.
Right.
You know, and I understand what Mr. Lear is saying. We're kind of put in a place because we've asked the taxpayers many, many times to give us public safety money for this process. And they've said no. Like, hard no's. Like, real hard. Real hard no's. I mean, even in my area where we need these guys, they say no, which is stupid. I don't understand it, but they say no. So, and going back, and I'm going to tie this all in. Excuse me if I take some snipe time a little bit. But
in Latin.
Getting back to the budget part, your budget line, I would rather say, let's budget your numbers for the numbers you bring in this year and not project them for next year. And then try to work out of that number, because we're still trying to get out of debt. And that's what Steve's saying. We're still trying to get out of debt. And everybody, when we see a little light, everybody seems to come to the coffer and say, hey, I could use this. Well, of course you can. And I want to work with everybody. I'm not trying to say that we don't need some wide receivers, we don't need a kick returner or whatever the sheriff needs, but we got to make sure we can do it within the line of the budget. And that's what I'm interested to find out in finance, is how many guys we can afford to put on. I know he asked for 12. I know you need 12, and I know you got some guys retiring, because we just begged the guy yesterday to maybe stay a little longer. And guys with 20 years of experience and guys with 1 year, I'd rather have you have 15 guys with 20 than 5 with 1, because you're going to get out of a lot more trouble with the 15 with 20 than you are with your 5 with 1 year. So we got to start getting some of these guys, some new guys in, to reap some of the benefits that the old guys have. You know, get some of that experience from them, because you can't just have us all of a sudden throw 10 new guys in there. Hey, good luck, guys. Here, good luck in Hopkins.
Well, in today's world too, like Sheriff said, you can't be a reactive police department.
No.
We need to be proactive,
And that's
especially
where
with what these guys are facing on a day in and day out basis.
We've put ourselves in that place because of not passing the public safety fund. I mean, we can't get any more out of our revenue budget. I mean, the sheriff's doing the best he can with corrections, but we can't squeeze any more out of that or expect to squeeze any more out of it. We're full. So going forward, I'm for hiring a couple more deputies and hiring some help so we can get the process cleaned up a little bit. But where are we at with our salary cap?
And that's a question for finance. That's where finance
and I don't
needs-
want to make anybody mad here, but that's really what we got to do, because we got to get out of this hole.
And that's a discussion that finance is going to have and look at.
So a couple things, and I appreciate Mr. Lear's analogy. Although I would caution everyone to remember that the quarterback normally gets too much credit when things are going good, and too much criticism when things are going bad. So keep that in mind when we're talking about, you know, who's doing what. The other thing I would mention about what Mr. Seroy said, and I know it's been said a number of times by various people, that we are in the hole, and nobody disputes that. The only thing I would tell you is it took us 12 years plus to get there. I don't know anybody in this room who thinks we can get out of it in 3 years, which is what we're trying to do. So, you know, you have to keep those things in mind, that something that took you 12 years to bury yourself in, you're not going to unbury yourself in 3 years without costing careers, without costing problems, without costing injuries to a staff that since their layoffs have been, we've not moved body one. We've got an opioid problem. We've got traffic problems. We've got officer safety issues. I mean, you can, the list goes on. And there's no crystal ball for us to say, hey, this year we're not going to have any traffic accidents, so we don't really need to patrol. We don't need a detective division because we don't have any murders. It doesn't work that way. And you know, we're not asking, and I asked for 12. I asked for 12 over a 3-year period, not to break the bank, not to put us back to where we were 12 years, what took us 12 years to get into. I'm asking for, and we also had an idea to say, look, give us 4 right now, and we'll put 1 who just serves papers. You would not believe how much that frees up the rest of our shifts on days and afternoons from serving papers, when we have a person serving papers and everybody else can get into a little bit of proactive mode. We also asked for a traffic unit. Another, even though it's not designed as a revenue generator, it does generate revenue. Civil process to serve papers generates revenue. I'm not asking to say, hey, give me 4 guys and we're not giving you anything back. I mean, you're getting civil process money, you're getting traffic ticket money, and then I asked for 2 more just to give bodies to our patrol division who are out there, as Mr. Byrne alluded to, by themselves with their backup maybe a half an hour away. So that's when I talk about priority. I understand everybody in this county probably wants a body here or there. I'm talking about you as elected county board members who chose to do this and have to make that decision based on what your priorities are. I mean, I'm not asking for anything that I don't believe we have. You know, we're not asking for anything extra. We're just asking for something to keep our guys from, you know, as I said at the finance meeting, technically, this board and this budget funds 31 deputies. It doesn't fund 43 deputies. It funds 31 because we get money back from Indian Oaks Academy, we get money back from KMEG, we get money back from the Metro, we get money back from sexual assault grant, we get money back from schools, we get money back from courthouse security, and we get money back from village contracts. That doesn't even include the money we get from civil process. So technically, it's probably more like 29 or 28 deputies that you're funding based on the revenue that we're bringing in for those things. All I'm asking for is if you would properly fund 43, that would get us up to 54 or 55, and that would get us up to a workable number. And I don't think that's asking for the moon.
Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Chairman. Couple points. One, you look at the public defender's report here that we've already passed. But the pending on traffic is 1,373. A year ago, it was over. And kudos to Mr. Glazier, or not Glazier, Regas. Sorry. But I mean, he's got it down. But we're not writing tickets.
Right.
It was always over
are,
2,000 pending. And I think what we need to do when we're talking about all these deputies is tie in this annex security to what we're talking about right now, because if we're going to have annex security, we're losing 2 more people. I mean, you're responsible for the annex security then, aren't you?
I have never been approached by anybody about providing security to the annex.
Is probation going to fund it?
No.
Okay, we're going to put a magnetometer in there. Somebody's going to have to work that magnetometer, isn't it?
You're absolutely correct.
Well, I think we need to tie the hiring of deputies in with this annex security then.
But understand, hiring 2 for that magnetometer, and I have that's later on our agenda, but hiring 2 people for that magnetometer, while it is a huge benefit for the employees who are down there, and those employees certainly deserve to come to work in a safe environment, it does absolutely nothing for our staffing. In fact, only hiring 2 for that magnetometer actually hurts us, because at some point those people will get days off. Those people will have vacation days.
That's my point.
Comp days, and we have to relieve them down there.
Sick days. I mean,
So now you're taking somebody else off the road for a position that's not even on the road. So give me 6. We'll call it even.
I'm going to make the motion to move this hiring right back to finance where it was brought up before. We need to discuss it, and we need to get something done.
Yes, most definitely. Okay, Mr. Hess makes, okay, and Mr. Payton makes the second. And we'll continue the discussion. Mr. Snipes. Oh, wait, all in favor of the motion to move to finance? Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Snipes.
I've been in both presentations. I heard the sheriff when he stated that he would like to get the 12 over a 3 or 4 year period of time. I mean, there's some compromise there. I think where they're saying, what he's saying is look at, or at least what I think I'm hearing him say, is that we're generating 2.5 million over par. So to look at the revenue side of it, because at one point we was your liabilities versus your revenue, we were way down somewhere in the dismal or abysmal categories of a lot of expense. We've looked at kind of achieving par. We're looking at some revenue that we did not have. We used to have the revenue, we lost it, cuts and things were made, but now he's saying of looking at that particular budget. And I believe I asked the question, what would it cost to put 3 or 4 into play? And I think it was less than $500,000, if I was mistaken. So basically of the $2.5 million, he's saying, you know, that look at 20% of that revenue or whatever, and consider using that 20% to let me do an adequate job on the streets. Now, I do know, dealing with law enforcement and having the training at the state of Illinois, you to understand it from a corrections, or even when I was riding with the, I was auxiliary here with the city. These officers, I know we deal with dollars, and we've been fortunate outside of to not have a tragedy occur. Doesn't say no injuries occur, but a tragedy to occur where we have just come in and lost officers or whatever, like San Fe, which can show you what can happen. And the reason that we call this a Jerome Cone Center, I was here when I was around when Jerome got killed or whatever. He was a correction officer. So you have to remind yourself that even though you're talking about public safety, there's also another side, and that's the safety of the officers. And so when we're looking at dollars, we have to take the tangible with the intangible, because every officer, or whatever, including me, who had to bury, someone in the state or whatever that lost their life at the age of 21, and carry that coffin and put the plaque that's over my badge to represent a falling, what I consider falling soldier, falling comrade. That's a horrible moment when you have to be in that presence when an officer, someone that, I mean, you went to training with, you fought for, you on the streets with, those officers, I mean, that's a hard thing to lose a brother, because that's what you actually become, brothers and sisters in law enforcement. So I don't want to put everything just on a dollar, but if there's a way that we can make sense out of the dollar, we're operating at a deficiency on public safety. If somebody was to roll up and kill one of the officers, then the first thing everybody do would be uproar. Public, we need more officers on the street, and so now they pushing stuff down your throat. You're going to kind of find a way. I think we need to be proactive in this situation. Yes, we are up under budget constraint, but I also realized after listening to his conversations since he's been in office and taken office, as he says, guys, I've maximized these tax dollars to the point of it being, I mean, it's applaudable. He's bringing in revenue from all sides to sustain the amount of officers he has, but at the same time, our expense is somewhere with 29 officers. So he's doing an incredible job. If he's got 43 and we're funding 29, you got to say that's applaudable from any standpoint. When I'm looking at the 2.5 million, and I'm saying let's take the 0.5 and attribute it to getting these officers up on the street, I think that there could be an argument made, a strong argument, that we do need to increase not only the public safety, but the safety of our officers on the street. I'm not trying to come to anyone's funeral because we're playing dollars and cents here, when there is some revenue, and he's not, it would be different if he was asking for all 2.5 million, but he didn't. He said, just give me, this 5 million, half of a million or less, so I can maintain the public safety of not only the community, but of my officers as well, because we're at a critical level here. And I don't think that's unfair, so that's why I support, however, being on both sides, and law enforcement side, and even though I'm on the county board, and out of law enforcement to a degree, you never lose that. You never lose the sight of, you just don't remember, you don't just forget when you had to bury a brother out there. It's almost like a soldier burying, again, a brother. We can't operate at a deficiency where it compromises the safety of the officers and the community. At some point, we have to use what I call common sense when we're dealing with good. Good is my acronym for getting out of debt. But getting out of debt should not be let's compromise lives. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Snips.
Thanks.
Mr. Vickery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the reservoir still going
It's deep.
I'll keep my
It's like
comments
it's like
brief.
it's shrinking like
Keep
Lake
my
Mead.
comments brief. The first question is, what department do you take it from? No, wait a minute. We spent it all. So next year, what department do you take it from? Where do you get the $500,000? That's the question. Now, let me go back to the audit's numbers, not Mr. Vickery's numbers. Last year, we took in $34 million. We spent $17.2 in public safety. Now, if you want to know about who did what in their budget, I invite you to go to page 25 of the 150 pages of the budget and look at the comparisons about who got their numbers right on their budget. Now, I'm going to say this. In finance, I'm going to advocate that we roll this into next year's budget. There's just no way that we can project right now where we would take that $500,000. I mean, you're going to have to take it from someplace. There's the pie. As far as reactive and proactive, it's been my observation over the last 35 years that public entities are reactive. They're not proactive. They answer to the problems that occur. On the private side, businesses on the private side, they can afford to be proactive. I mean, they can set their budget, and they can increase cost or decrease cost and increase price. We can't do that. As Mr. Lear brought to our attention, we don't have any place to go. I think the sheriff is right. He says, let's make sure that we don't plug in a number that's not attainable for income. We may not have $34 million next year. So where does the $500,000 come from? That's the question. Thank you.
I would,
Oh, sure.
I would only say from a proactive standpoint, there are many, many police departments that are very proactive. And most police departments are government entities. When there are villages in this town that are responsible for half the number of citizens that we as a county are responsible for. Some of you guys may not even understand that there are 35,000 residents in the unincorporated areas of our county. That's the largest group of people in any municipality in this county. And there are times where some of these other villages and small police departments have 3 more cars on duty than we do. So to say that police agencies are not proactive, I think is a mistake, and I think it's incorrect. You know, we could be proactive given adequate staffing.
Mr. Seawright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this is my last time for the Sheriff. Sheriff, a couple questions I'd like you to have answers for at the Finance Department. And these are simple questions, and I probably know the answers, but I'm not sure. The last hire date, you got 2 lateral guys, and what was the date that you last hired sheriff deputies?
Last year sometime.
Yeah, so I
End
just
of last year.
the date.
But those were replaced people. He did not add any.
Right. They were
Replaced
replacement, but
retirements.
lateral.
So understand to that point. Oh, go ahead.
All
Ask
right,
your second question.
This kind of ties into how many deputies do you have up to that are 20-year plus that are able to retire
Okay.
coming up in the next 2 years? Or let's go 3 years. Give us a 3 years since you want for.
And that number will be there
maybe,
are some people that are still unclear.
Guy back there, he's retired. He's still retired. He could retire.
And that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Glad you pointed Chief McCabe.
Yeah,
He's my deputy chief, and he's working the road today.
I know. I understand.
Yeah.
So I just want those questions for finance to,
Okay.
How many guys you got gonna, possibly retire, and when was the last time you got to hire somebody, ever?
I think that I think to Mr. Seroy's point from a finance perspective, and I think this just adds on to what we've been saying. You know, going back a couple years, when Sheriff Bukowski retired and I was appointed as sheriff, we didn't replace that spot. When Al Swinford, our chief of operations, retired, we replaced him with a body, but at half the salary. When the other three retired, they were probably making somewhere around 75 or 80,000 by just salary alone, not benefits, because I know benefits is a big issue. It wasn't yesterday when we hired this guy from the grant, but all of a sudden benefits are always an issue with us. They went from making 80,000 to a first-year guy making 50,000. So that's $30,000 a guy. So it's not like we're replacing people with, it's not like school teachers where you have 10 years experience and you go to another school district with that 10 years experience. That's not how it works. We get a rookie guy or a first-year guy in a lateral, we're saving $30,000 a guy every time we replace somebody. But we've never, nobody's ever said, hey, great, Sheriff, you got 30,000 more, we can maybe combine a couple and get another guy. So you're talking over $200,000 between my position, Al Swinford's position, and the three retirees. You're talking over $200,000 that we didn't get squat for.
And that's kind of where I'm going, Sheriff. Yeah. You know, because I'm seeing the dollars that we're laying down and the dollars we're going to be picking up. So that's kind of where I'm going with that.
I figured. I figured I'd answer it right now.
Thank you.
Who was up first? Okay.
Yeah, we can move on.
No one can fault the sheriff and his department for being good about
no, and I don't
squeezing a buck. Okay, every department has done that. The thing, we go back to the main question: where's the 400,000 come? Just, you know, figure it out. Do we take it out of the county clerk? Where do we take the money?
And this, a lot of this is for finance. A lot of this is for finance guys too. This is let's move it forward a little bit. We're getting caught in discussion that must for finance. Mr. Lear, then Mr. Snipes, then we'll wrap this up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would address Mr. Snipes' remarks in terms of public safety. I certainly appreciate his sentiments. They are appropriate and need to be brought before us. I would also, however, ask if the deputies are the only ones that raise public safety issues. In my mind, I'm wondering what would happen in terms of safety of correctional officers if the air conditioning went down in Jerome Cone Detentional Center. What would that become a safety issue with the kind of attitude that the inmates might have? So I think that there are potential public safety issues that we have to evaluate as we make our decisions that go beyond just the deputies on the road. They have clearly the most obvious public safety issues, but I would want us to evaluate all public safety issues that are faced by county employees.
Thank you, and then wrap it up with Mr. Snipes.
I'll submit to you that when I put on here 17.1.
You need to be, Bob, you need to be on a mic.
Oh, the 17.7, okay, y'all give it up. Look at the numbers, 17.1 and 17.5. And the reason I took the 17.5 is because technically we say we're going to move it up to 17.7. But given that the $200,000 that you would have saved internally when veteran officers leave and you bringing in the fresh officers to replace them, that $200,000, if you would have not spent it but left it alone and allowed them to do the accounting internally, that would have gotten us to 17.5. The 17.1 million you're saying to the 17.5. So where do we find it? If you allowed them to do the 200,000 and you're saying where do we find the 400,000, that would eliminate two. Now I don't know, but maybe perhaps you all steered me wrong. But we got out of a jail incident that we claimed saved us and brought in 5.5 million and then 1.5 to the county, correct? So I'm not saying when we're looking at all the revenues, I'm not saying that it's not there, but that's in addition. If we don't even consider that, you're talking 2.5. We're saying of that 2.5.
And that's a finance issue.
Yeah, that's
Bob,
a
let's
finance.
move this
but
forward.
I
This
think
is a
we have
finance
to bring
committee.
in,
That's a finance
we have to have a
committee topic.
rationale when we send it to finance, because I don't want them to get into it's the dollar amount, because we can play numbers. I have a degree in accounting, so we can play the numbers.
And that's
but what I'm saying is
that's for finance.
let us know. Well, the finance is a part or a segment of the board, but I want a valid concern when they go there and pick up this minutes. I want them to know those numbers can be worked out or whatever if they sit here and not just be myopic and look only in one direction. Look at it as a kaleidoscope and deal with it. Because technically, if the judge, as Sandy's, if the judge turns around and give us a mandate, we're going to have to find the money.
Again, this is the discussion.
Right. When the
bring up in
elevators went out,
finance.
we
This is a
found $1 million.
finance. Let's bring that up in finance.
Right. Let's find $500,000.
We're moving this on. Let's move it. It's going on the finance. And
Well, I just had to turn around and show another perspective, because they asked the question to me, where would I find it?
finally, Mr. Payton. Okay. We already voted. We voted. We're all good. We're moving the finance. We'll move on to the next subject.
I listed this as IT issues, and it's just basically, again, some of the same things. Computers that
It's a kaleidoscope.
take a message. Computers that we have been working with within our department on both sides, the corrections side and our administration side. There was a point in time where we got those from the county. That was 5 or 6 years ago. We have not replaced any of those over the course of the last 5 or 6 years. Many are getting antiquated and somewhat unusable. I don't know what the county's plan is for IT, and I'm glad Kevin is here today to maybe tell us if there is a plan.
As Mr. Burns can,
Oh, yeah.
Chairman Burns can tell you, I've brought this up in executive that because of the cuts to my department, we've been in maintenance mode for probably 6 or 7 years. I don't know if you guys can hear us, which means we weren't able to purchase any new equipment. And Trent's been doing the same thing that we do, which is we have to replace the parts. I've also been saying in the committees, we've gotten to the point where we can't keep doing that. Now things are running.
Right. Oh yeah.
One of the things I'm addressing in committee is I've talked about, at least on our side, is that I have to start replacing at least the operating system and some of the machines. They have to be changed by January of 2020, just insurance reasons alone, because I don't know if you guys care about it, but we have to care about it, because we can't run Windows 7 giving our insurance situation after that, because Microsoft says you're a security risk at that point. You have to have different machines, because if something happens, you can't put in a claim for insurance. What I'm trying to do on my side is we're buying used machines, but I really don't even have the money to buy the used machines.
I just think it's something this committee needs to be aware of, that, and probably your committee as well, that computers are certainly an issue.
I used to ship maybe, on our good years before that, maybe
Right.
15 to 20 a year.
Oh yeah.
And then down to 10, then the 5.
Right.
The last 5 or 7 I gave you, those actually were the ones that I was going to replace at our side. I just gave them to them. Now we haven't been able to do that for quite some time. I am buying used ones as it comes out, and honestly, they will work fine. When I say used, we're not buying 7-year-old one. We may buy 2 or 3, but that's half the price.
Right.
So yes, what he's saying is the case that I've brought up in executive is we're getting past that stage. Mr. Byrne will be aware, I've said we have to have things switched out, at least on our side. I can't speak for Sandy's already doing something, but she pays for theirs. Probation's doing something. We'll work on that. They're paying for theirs. But on where the budget's sitting now, the budget would have to change for me to do something different and give the sheriff some, because we are probably 1/3 of the budget that we were when we used to provide those
I
machines.
totally understand that. No
So
doubt.
we got hit pretty hard. So what he's saying is legitimate. I just don't have any ability
Right.
to give any.
And there's no blame here, Kevin, not at all. I know you and Trent work together a lot to provide that stuff, and I know you can't anymore. But now it's affected us as well, and so now we're getting to the point where we're unable to do
I guess I would more say that I'm validating what he's saying.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. It's the same things I'm bringing apart. I just don't speak to the sheriff's department. I'm here actually to support her when she speaks about something. They have their own staff, so I don't get into staff. But he has the same problems that I have.
And then lastly, unless there's any questions on the computer issue, lastly, the annex security. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but Wes and I, along with Tom and Grace and Randy from probation, went down and did some configuring, and I think yesterday, the board actually approved up to $13,000 in construction, and what is it down to now, about 6,000 or 7,000? Is that? Yeah. So we made some modifications to doing some things that is actually going to save the county money in making that place a secure facility for the employees. The question becomes, and I don't know if we've ordered the magnetometer yet. Has the magnetometer been ordered, Randy? Do you know? Okay. I know I talked to Tom a little bit yesterday, and he wasn't sure either, but I know the issue will end up being security, so that'll be part of finance, I guess. So that's all I got.
Right. Thank you very much. Mr. Fairfield.
Computers.
Say that again. I'm sorry, Ray.
Get some numbers together to let us know how much it'd be to replace some computers for the sheriff's department.
Sure. Absolutely.
For this committee.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. And girls.
Mr. Turner. You have the monthly report for probation in your packet. I need a motion to approve. Mr. Legess, second by Mr. Snipes. All in favor? Opposed? How you doing?
Morning. I'll need about a half an hour.
No questions.
No, Tom just wanted me to be here in case there were questions about the report, and just to point out that one of the numbers that we'll probably need to start looking at is the detention numbers. Just because with the sale of the River Valley, then that'll be something that'll be a per diem. So down the road, that'll be something that we'll pay attention to. In June, we had 7 in River Valley for a total of 218 detention days. So just something to think about down the road.
Any questions at all, Mr. Turner? Spellbound.
Thank you.
Last but not very least is Eric Cavender. You have the monthly reports in your packet. Need a motion to combine and approve. Mr. Snipes, second by Mr. Legest. All in favor? Opposed? Motion.
Morning. June was a pretty average month. Again, autopsies are down, which is good. Trend is still going down. Overdoses are still down, so we're doing good there.
What do you attribute that to, the decrease?
Education, yeah. I will say, what the sheriff was talking about with the traffic unit, if you look when the sheriff's department had the traffic unit, I think it was 2012, 2013, something like that, our vehicle deaths were down.
Okay.
And that number, the vehicle deaths were down, but the last couple of years that number's risen, but it's kind of been overshadowed by the drug numbers, so we haven't looked at it as intensely as we probably should have. But I know from our side, we would advocate for more deputies to help us in these different issues that we're seeing. So it all correlates in one big circle, really. So.
Yeah, it does.
But I do think education's probably definitely helping it.
declaration of surplus vehicle.
Yes, we're seeking to declare surplus the 2009 Ford Expedition. It's got a little bit more than 100,000 miles on it. We are going to replace that with a 2019 Ford Explorer. Actually ordered, production on it started Monday, and we should have that in September from Court Street Ford. So we can get a motion.
We need a motion to approve. Mr. McConnell, second by Mr. Payton. All in favor? Opposed?
And the 2019 Ford, that money is coming from the coroner's fees account. So the cremation permits and FOIAs, that we'll pay for that. And then in early June, we paid off one of our 17 Explorers that we had leased for 5 years. We paid that off about 3.5 years early and saved about $1,400 in interest. So that's a good move there too.
Yep.
That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. Any old business or new business before the committee? Yep. Be sure to sign. No new business, no old business? No, new. Need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Ms. Evans. Have a nice day, everybody.